I've been thinking a lot about my grandma, Hetty R. we called her. And the reason that I've been thinking about her in this particular time is that she loved to argue politics.
Now's the time.
Not debate, argue. And, you know, these times are contentious, and there's a lot of people that love to argue politics. And as I was a very little girl, I realized that it was utterly pointless. How many of you have ever had your mind changed because someone has argued with you about your point of view? Ha-ha. Isn't that the truth? There was a phrase that I came up against or ran into that I want to share with you. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it says, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. And yesterday I caught just bits and pieces of that movie about Gandhi. And I realized during that time how powerful and how much strength it takes to totally live a life of nonviolence and non-resistance. And so, reminding you that for every conflict, there has to be resistance, right? Resistance. There can't be a conflict unless there's resistance. There was a story that I ran across not too long ago about a little boy. I'm calling him Keith. I never did say what his name was. But Keith was about 10 years old, and he was in a car accident and lost his left arm. And that left him subject to bullying, and he was depressed and feeling really unhappy. And so his parents decided that he would be well off to get enrolled in judo. So they enrolled him in judo. And his sensei taught him one move. And Keith practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. And he said to his sensei, now, when will I learn some more judo? And the sensei said, just get this one move down, and then we'll talk about it. So it happened that Keith was entered in a judo competition, and he won his first match. And he was kind of surprised in himself and kind of happy and feeling rather powerful, and then he won the second one. And he was feeling even better and even better. And so what kept happening that he, with his one move, was winning all of the competition in this match, or all the matches in this competition. And so finally, it came down to Keith and this one other large, powerful, muggy kind of guy. And the referee called the match. He wanted to call the match, and the sensei said, oh no, let him continue. And the referee said, well, the boy has only got one arm. He's missing his left arm, and this is a very powerful competitor. The sensei said, no, let him finish. So Keith, trusting his sensei, gathered up his courage and his strength And he was really having some trouble, but finally that competitor made a mistake, and Keith used his one powerful move and won the tournament. And he was dazzled by it, and so he said on the way home to his sensei, he said, "Sensei, how does it happen that I could win this tournament with one move? I just don't understand it." And the sensei said, "Well, you are learning and mastering one of the most difficult moves in all of judo." And the sensei said, "The only way for your competitors to counter that move is to grip your left arm." Non-resistance, don't you see? Sometimes your biggest weakness is also your biggest strength. Non-resistance. There's no sense in arguing. There's no sense in resisting. I have another story. This is on NPR. It was about this fellow named Julio Diaz, who was coming off the subway in the Bronx, and a young mugger came up to him with a knife, and with his knife demanded Julio's wallet. Julio said, "Sure, okay." And he gave him his wallet, and the kid took it, and backed off, started to walk away. Julio said, hey, wait a minute. You've forgotten something. If you're gonna be out robbing people tonight, you don't have a coat. You're gonna get really cold. Why don't you take my coat too? The kid was a little dazzled by that. And then Julio said, I was just gonna go across the street to eat. Are you hungry? Come on, come with me. So he and the little robber boy, with his knife, went across the street to the cafe to eat. And Julio knew everybody in the cafe. And everybody in the cafe stopped to say hi to him. And the kid said, hey, do you own this place? Julio said, no, I just come here often. And the kid said, well, everybody, you're so nice to everybody. You're even nice to the dishwasher. And Julio said, well, yeah. Weren't you taught to treat everybody nice? Well, yeah, the kid said, but nobody ever does. So Julio started talking to him and said, what do you want out of life? And the kid had no idea what he was talking about, much less what he was wanting out of life. The bill came. And Julio said, since you took my wallet, I don't have any money. And so the kid gave him his wallet back. Julio paid the bill and gave the kid $20 because he didn't have any money. So they got ready to leave and they got up and Julio said, you can give me one more thing. The kid said, what would that be? Give me your knife. And the kid did. That's a true story. The kid that was robbing him, mugging him with a knife, turned it over to him, and he was telling his mom about it. And his mom said, well, that's the kind of boy you are, he thought. You'd give anybody anything. That little boy, that little mugger was just like you. So Julio said, I figure, if you treat people right, you can only hope that they'll treat you right. It's as simple as it gets in this complicated non-resistance. Non-resistance. It happened that I came across the story of Pollyanna. I'm not ever sure that I actually read the story of Pollyanna, but I've often been called one. But here's the story about Pollyanna. It was written in 1913 by Eleanor Porter. And it's the story of a little girl whose parents were very poor. And she and her dad were in we'd call it a homeless place now. I don't know what they called it in 1913, but she wanted a doll so bad. She really wanted a little baby doll. And the only thing left in the free barrel was crutches. So her dad taught her the gladness game. The gladness game, or the glad game. Told her and taught her that she should be glad because she didn't have crutches. She didn't need crutches. And so it turned out that something happened to her dad and she became orphaned. And she went to live with her Aunt Polly, who was rich and wealthy, but quite an old, nasty, angry, unmarried woman. And she wasn't happy about having Pollyanna live with her, but it was her duty after all. This was her niece, and she owed it to her sister to take care of this child. But she did it with reluctance and with anger and rage. Pollyanna started playing the glad game. She was so glad for the wonderful attic view where her aunt had put her. Of course, it was cold and it had no heat and it had no warmth, or it was ugly and it was a nasty place to be, but Pollyanna was happy for the wonderful view from her attic room. Aunt Polly got mad at her for being late to dinner and sent her off to the kitchen for milk and bread to eat with the cook Nancy. And Pollyanna was glad, but she really liked milk and bread, and she was very fond of the cook Nancy. She played the gladness game. And she also had occasion to teach everyone in the village the gladness game. And her influence and her joy and her enthusiasm and her excitement for life spread through the village. Aunt Polly was the last one to succumb to the gladness game. But she ultimately did and married Dr. Becker. And it happened that Pollyanna had a car accident and she lost the use of her legs. And she also lost her gladness. And she was in despair. She would never walk again, she didn't believe. What good did the gladness game give her? She couldn't think of anything to be glad about. But one by one, the villagers came to visit her and to tell her how much they had benefited from her joyful spirit and her Pollyanna attitude and her game of glad. Now, because this is the 1913 story, she had an opportunity, because of Dr. Becker, to go to the hospital, and she learned to walk again, and therefore she could be very glad. Now, you know, I really liked this gladness game. I'd never actually heard of it, even though I'd been accused of being a Pollyanna all of my life. And you know, it was not a kind of thing to be called. Oh, Rebecca, you're just such a Pollyanna. The truth of the matter is, we know that when we live in joy, more joy comes to us. When we live in gratitude, more things to be grateful come to us. And so I am an undying, indefatigable Pollyanna. And nothing you say or nothing you can do is going to change my mind about that. And you know, I really like the glad game. We've been talking about writing our gratitude journal and keeping, noticing and being in gratitude. But somehow or other, being glad in even the most difficult, challenging times, finding the things to be glad for is very powerful to me. I like the spin on it. I like being glad, and I've been practicing it. Yesterday we had a class on soul collage, and some of us didn't really want to be there. But we were so glad that we went. It was a wonderful opportunity to allow our deepest self to show up and surprise us. Now let's see the political scene for these days. I can be glad to live in a democracy where people have an opportunity to state their opinions and, like my grandmother, argue about them. I would not like to live in a country or a place where my opinion and my thoughts and my ideas are suppressed. And yet I know that arguing is such a futile spending of time. So I invite you this week to think about playing the glad game and to remember that you don't have to attend every argument that you're invited to. Because the key to a peaceful and joyful life is non-resistance. And for someone to take you down, they have to get a grip on you. You can be like Keith and have nothing to hold on to, nothing to get you down with, nothing to grip you with. So those are my suggestions for today, for this week, to practice the glad game, to find something in every circumstance and situation that may get you down, to find something to really be glad about. And to remember that you do not have to attend every argument that you're invited to. Now here's my gladness for this week. I'm so glad that you all are here. And I love each one of you. Namaste. So I would invite the practitioners to stand with me and hold the consciousness that we have our prayer. I settled into that place that is innately glad, joy-filled, happy and peaceful. place where I know that I need not resist anything. That I only need to hold to, cling to the knowledge of the divine, the universal one, and trust that all is well and all will end well. It cannot be otherwise. And today it has come to my attention that many of the pets of our congregation are having some challenges. So I call forth in the universal the recollection of the power and the strength and the divine mold and model that each one of those animals was created in. And I call forth the memory of that for every cell, every organ, every system of their bodies. And I know as that's true for our animals, it's also true for each one of us. There is a divine mold and model that we were created with, styled and shaped by the divine. And I allow my body to remember, like an elastic rubber band, how to snap back to its original design. And as that's true for each one of us physically, I know it is true for each one of us in our lives. There is a divine design and mold and model for each of our lives. We remember and carry on the very depth of our being that recollection of who we are, the divine, what we're called forth to do and to be. And I allow that recollection now at this moment, this time. I invite you, no matter what your prayer may be, whatever circumstance, situation you may be in, that same style of non-resistance, hold it up and allow the universe, God, Spirit, the divine, to manage it for you. You have everything you need, everything you long for. Exactly at this moment. And so with joy, with confidence in my word and the way the universe works, I just release it without resistance. I turn it over and I claim good and more good, tidings of gladness and more gladness for each one of us. And with anticipation, with excitement, I stand back and wait for the miracle of the divine essence to be at work in my life. And I invite you to own that understanding with me, to join with me as I declare it done. And as I say,
and so it is.